Hello, this is the third and final video of the exploration of average age methods for the piano. And the last one we're exploring is the music tree by Francis Clark. Now, this is quite unique. It was one of the first and most innovative of its kind, and it differs quite a bit from Bastian and Alfred, as you'll see. So as we open this book, the very first thing, unlike Alfred and Bastian, which was position at the piano and hand position and finger numbers, is that you get two characters, Chip and Bobo. Chip is a little chipmunk with great big eyes who helps you see everything in the music. So they're putting in the student's mind visual already right from the beginning. And Bobo, a dog with long ears who helps you listen to every sound you make at the piano, is getting in their minds the aural aspects of music making. This is the very first thing. Musicality is really at the forefront of this beginning here of this method. And then we turn the page, and as you see, there's already note heads. Very, very different from the other methods. And it's very pattern-based. Now, one similarity is that it's the groups of two black keys. Alfred and Bastian also have a similar approach, except both hands are for one group. So one finger is on one, and the other finger is on the other, and they just have this direction. Now, it is interesting to note that, much like Bastian and Alfred, they do group the first sets in groups of four. So they're feeling this music. There's an accompaniment, teacher accompaniment, just like the others, and there's an accompanying disc, so that they inherently feel rhythms in music. So this is very similar. But as we turn the page, it's interesting to note that now it's in groups of five. They introduce the half note, and it's divided in an irregular meter. Very unusual for a beginner. Nowhere else is this seen, especially not before the Francis Clark music tree. So this goes on off the staff, which being off the staff is very similar to Alfred and Bastian as well. But something begins to happen as we get through here. Now, of course, they know the direction of keys, and they can name the keys based on the letters and the layout of the keyboard. They introduce the groups of three, and they have exercises based on that as well. But as I say, as the staff gets introduced, something interesting begins to happen. And you will see that as it comes to page 33. The staff is introduced, but it's not a full staff. As you see, they indicate the note on the line, and then they only add one line to the staff. So there's two lines of a staff. And so it's very, very intervallic. It's intervallically based. They give you the starting note, and then the rest is based on the spacing, the intervals in between. Now, this is one of the key factors of the music tree. And as we continue, you'll see it looks very different. And musicality is enforced or reinforced with the accompaniments. But it looks very different, and it's a very different approach in the way that it goes about. It stays with this partial staff for quite some time, and then slowly adds extra lines, line by line. And you'll find a few familiar melodies, like Beethoven's Ninth. They add another line, but it isn't until... Oh, and you'll also see that they do incorporate the bar lines, much like Bastian and Alfred, but not for quite a while. And they do have this partial meter here too, where they indicate the note that gets the beat by putting a note head there rather than the number. I think this is a good conceptual tool for the student. I know when I was young, that bottom number of the meter always confused me. Finally, you get a full staff towards the end of the book. And then you get these landmark notes, which you have the F in the F clef, the bass clef, which is perfect, and it helps them understand why it's called the F clef sometimes, and the G clef or the treble clef. You get the G. So now this is when they introduce the grand staff, so that they're able to recognize their landmark notes. They use an orange line. This is, I think, a very effective way of going about it. Now, supplementary material to this method are their activities book, which is essentially a theory book. Now, this looks more like the beginning of the lesson book for Alfred and Bastian, which is interesting. They have the finger numbers, and of course this accompanies, so they'll be doing these two things at the same time. The direction, they're writing the alphabet in order, going up, going down, the letter names of keys, the types of notes, half note, quarter note, and they have to write them in, fill them in. So this is a reinforcement of rhythm conceptually, rather than just aesthetically and musically as it's more so presented in the lesson book. Now as you go up, there's other books, supplementary, but something interesting to notice, however, is that as you get to level 1, it really doesn't look that much different than Bastion does on the page. However, it's not confined to the one hand position because it's not really a multi-key. So the hand is not just in one position all the time. Now, another book that they supplement is the Keyboard Technic or Technique book. And of course they address scale your figures. This is a very common figure. But they also move the position a bit more than, for example, the Bastion, which is, like I say, a bit confined. So twin motors, it works the fingers moving, it works on coordination, and it can really strengthen that way in facilitation of the keyboard. They also get later on the Student's Choice, which is basically a solo performance book for their pleasure and for their creativity, musicality. But something interesting to notice is that there's a lot more option for harmonic variation and interesting sound because of the approach that it takes from the beginning. So listen to Night Clouds. They get to move their hands. It's very interesting for the student, fun. They feel like they're showing off. And listen to these sonorities. It's very interesting, very beautiful. And their hands are certainly not confined. In fact, they're exploring the whole keyboard. So that's a very neat feature. And finally, one other thing to mention, especially compared to Bastion, and even Alfred for that matter, is the variation of hand reaching or position. So a fine example of what I mean is the Quiet Promenade in the music literature, the keyboard literature book, which is another supplement, in which this particular piece is based on octaves here, with a 5 finger in the right hand, but it changes. You get really interesting harmonic language, and it's very diverse that way. But this is only one example. They all differ quite a bit from one another in terms of where the hands have to go and how it sounds and how it's laid out. So it's very eclectic in that way and makes it interesting for the student, and they're playing a more variety of music. So that is a synopsis of the music tree approach. Very different, fundamentally really, from the Alfred and the Bastion.